effective CLIL, and we've all said this and we'll continue to say this, effective CLIL has the potential to open many, many doors for our students, be they linguistic, be they cognitive, be they cultural. But in order for this to happen, whether you've got English teachers working on their own or whether you've got content teachers working through another language or whether they're working together, in order for this to happen, we need to support our students. We talk a lot about policy and planning, we talk a lot about teachers, and very often I don't think we talk enough about the students themselves. When I talk about support for students, I'm talking about support from parents, I'm talking about support from teachers, from the school itself, and as Sue was talking, support from peers. Yeah? Because when you start teaching a subject through another language, when traditionally it's been taught in the mother tongue, that will change the classroom dynamics. It has to. And how do you support your students through this? When we talk about change in education, the bottom line of that educational change should be how does it benefit our students, and yet very often in a lot of educational contexts the students don't even come near the top of the list. If we take Malaysia as an example, and David's already mentioned Malaysia, and there's a great, can I just borrow this? Okay. And there's a great article in it in the Guardian Weekly. If we take Malaysia as an example, science and maths began to be taught through English in Malaysia in 2003 in stages. And in order to support this policy, changes were put into place. Changes such as resources. An immense amount of money was invested in resources for Malaysian schools, and these resources were mainly ICT, in forms of programs on CD-ROMs, in terms of hardware for schools. And an awful lot of money was invested in teacher training, and that teacher training was predominantly proficiency, not methodology. An awful amount of time and resources were put into a system called the buddy support system, where a subject teacher could, when he or she needed or required, speak to a language teacher or get support from a language teacher in order to plan classes. And yet, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, and yet, by many, the policy has been seen to be less than successful. The focus for a great deal of the investment, excuse me, has been on the teachers, and that's fine, and that's obvious because teachers are a crucial change agent. But while teachers are being trained, while they're getting used to a new language, a new methodology, and sometimes even a new identity in the classroom, what's happening to the students? Who's supporting them? Who's making sure that they are going through the change effectively? Who's making sure that the classroom dynamics are okay? Who's making sure that they're not confused, that suddenly they're having their subject taught through a language that they're not even used to? And maybe it's not the second language, maybe it's the third or fourth language, which is certainly the case in some parts of Malaysia. What I'm not saying that teachers aren't doing their jobs. I think they're trying their best. I think that when we plan such important change programs, we need to think about support structures for students, and sometimes I think that gets left to the wayside. And also, I mean, in terms of the vote that we've just had, yes, CLIL, I think, is definitely the way forward for English language teaching. But as Sue mentioned earlier, I think that we have to be really, really careful not to compromise those opportunities for growth in the linguistic domain, in the cognitive domain, the cultural domain, that English language teaching affords in an ordinary classroom. I just want to pick up on a couple of things that I think Sue and Peter said, and they mentioned two very important things. Discussions are really important. Discussions between teachers, discussions across the school, and partnerships. And I think one of the key partnerships, and certainly I think this has been overlooked in Malaysia, is between the teacher and the parent. Yeah, and if we want parents to support the students and support the school, they need to be integrally involved right from the beginning. And I'm not sure whether this is the case in European settings, but certainly not in Malaysia, though they are beginning to think about it now.